Je fais à la France le don de ma personne pour atténuer son malheur.
It is on April 24, 1856, during the Second Empire, in Cauchy-à-la-Tour in Artois, that Philippe Pétain was born into an old family of farmers. He is 17 months old when his mother dies after the birth of her fifth child. His father remarries. Philippe grew up under the more attentive guidance of his paternal grandmother and a maternal great-uncle, Philippe Lefebvre, a former military man who became an abbot. The sensitivity of this grandmother, a witness to the hardships of the Revolutionary and Imperial Wars, combined with the dazzled memories of the campaigns carried out with Napoleon by this original great-uncle, shaped the character of the future officer. At the same time, he pursued good studies and received a solid religious education from his maternal uncle, Abbé Legrand. At 14 years old, he, along with all those of his generation, witnessed the defeat of 1870 and felt the wound inflicted on national pride by the loss of territory and the humiliation of the proclamation of the Grand Reich in Versailles itself. His choice is made. He will embrace a military career. At 20 years old, Philippe Pétain was admitted to Saint-Cyr after a first assignment in Villefranche-sur-Mer, where he learned his trade as an officer by working closely with the troops. He was promoted to lieutenant in 1883 and requested to serve in the 3rd Battalion of Infantry Hunters, stationed in Besançon. Graduating from the Higher War School in 1890, he alternated between various field assignments and taught a remarkable tactics course known for its conciseness, realism, and precise awareness of what future wars would entail, which he presented with authority and earned him the nickname the Precise One. At the same time, he displayed an independence that displeased the general staff and the politicians of the time. In addition to his military considerations that opposed official theories, he refused to submit to unjust orders. Thus, in response to the order given to him at the war school to denounce the officers who go to Mass, he, who does not attend, replied, "Being in the front row, I cannot identify them to you." Similarly, they refused to shake hands with Louis André, the Minister of War, from this violently anti-Catholic government, which comes from the majority that wants the separation of church and state, orders inventories, meaning the legal plundering of churches, breaks relations with the Vatican, expels religious figures, or forces them to adopt secular attire. These expelled religious figures will find France and their freedom with the French state in 1940. Finally, because it came from the secretary of the same minister, he refused a promotion to colonel in 1904 and would wait until 1909 to achieve this rank, which he was blocked from attaining until 1914 at the declaration of war. He was then 58 years old. From the first months of the war, which were deadly and revealed serious shortcomings and errors of his government, he proved to be an exceptional leader. Promoted to brigadier general and entrusted with increasingly important responsibilities, he rose through the ranks, became the commander of an army corps, was cited in the army orders, and was made an officer of the Legion of Honor. This was on October 12, 1914, less than 3 months after the start of the conflict. The course of the war will confirm the qualities and value of General Pétain, who, from being a retrievable colonel in 1914, will finish the war as commander-in-chief of the French army, a position to which he was appointed on May 15, 1917. The realism of the peasant, the clarity of the tactics professor from the war school, combined with an understanding of people and the troops, make him an effective leader on the battlefield and well-liked by his soldiers. Here is what one of his contemporaries, General Edmond Buat, who died in 1923, wrote in his daily journal in mid-May 1915. General Pétain is one of those officers whom peace left trailing far behind the career politicians in red or black trousers. One of those officers whom all military personnel, on the other hand, appreciate at their true value and whom the war has finally placed in his rightful position. Starting the campaign as a colonel, acting commander of a brigade, he became a brigadier general, division general, Army Corps commander, officer, and then commander of the Legion of Honor, all of which he earned. One could say, at the tip of his sword. He is the one who took Carency, Ablain, and Neuville. He will be the one to have Souchez. He manages all of this with his usual calm and his in-depth knowledge of the 3 branches of the military. With the absolute certainty that the current war is fought much more with cannon fire than with the loss of men. On February 26, 1916, upon learning of his appointment to Verdun, General Pétain arrived on site and took charge of the situation. I expect that with the troops arriving in addition to the 20th Corps, he will restore order over there. The successor to the commander-in-chief is simple, General Pétain. General Pétain, because he succeeded in all that he had announced, will naturally be seen as the one who restored the situation at Verdun, which had been compromised by others. On August 23, 1918, Philippe Pétain received the Military Medal, a decoration intended for soldiers and non-commissioned officers, the most prestigious award for generals who have served as commander-in-chief. The citation specifies that he has always demonstrated, in all the commands held during the war, the finest moral and technical qualities. He has just earned imperishable titles of national recognition for having broken the German advance and successfully pushed it back. It is the only decoration that he will usually wear and take with him to his grave, the one who also receives the Marshal's baton starting November 19, 1918. It was in 1916 that Philippe Pétain, called to lead the army on February 25th and assigned to the Verdun sector, gained the immense popularity that would make him the savior of France for the soldiers of this First World War and the nation as a whole. Whoever has not fought at Verdun has not fought in the war, the Poilus asserted. It was during this battle, the echoes of which resonated around the world and made him a recognized celebrity, visited and consulted, that Philippe Pétain forged his reputation as the most humane of leaders. Indeed, at Verdun, from his headquarters established in Souilly, where, from February to December 1916, more than three-quarters of the French army passed through, concerned about the fate of the soldiers facing the greatest artillery bombardment that history had known up to that point, he boosted the morale of the troops who, thanks to the measures taken to soften and humanize their daily lives, would fight, suffer, and die until victory. At Duomo, during an official visit on September 21, 1929, General Pershing, the commander-in-chief of the American Army, declared, "Only those who know the concern of your heart can measure the burden of the anxieties it has borne. None of your soldiers fell without their leader feeling a wound, and the impassive mask that hides your feelings has covered a constant and unrelenting sorrow." These words inevitably bring to mind Joan of Arc, who, in the fervor of her mission, declared, "I have never seen French blood flow without my hair standing on end." It is under the walls of the martyred city that the Grand Cross of the Legion of Honor is awarded to the victor of Verdun. In 2016, for the centenary of the battle, alongside a sacrilegious demonstration organized in the middle of the Douaumont Cemetery, the authorities sought to completely erase the name of Marshal Pétain from Verdun, contesting his crucial role by opposing him to Generals Nivelle and Mangin, who succeeded him at Verdun starting in April 1916. It is forgotten that if Pétain left the theater of operations on that date, it was to take command of the Central Army, which the Second Army at Verdun depended on, where the generals who succeeded him obeyed his orders, applied his tactical options, while perpetuating the famous Noria of the Sacred Way, all conditions that allowed for victory after these 11 months of war. It is especially forgotten that it was the Poilus themselves and the entire country that awarded him the title of the victor of Verdun and savior of France, not only for his then undisputed action at Verdun, but also considering the entire war and particularly the terrible year of 1917 when Nivelle, reverting to the strategy of excessive offensives that was so deadly at the Chemin des Dames, provoked mutinies. It is in this crisis situation, which affects more than half of the French regiments and seriously jeopardizes the outcome of a war that has lasted for 3 years, that Pétain, recently promoted to Chief General, is entrusted with the task of managing it. His humanity and sense of honor managed to restore the morale of the troops, which would lead to the final victory. Finally, let us clarify the political as well as military foresight of the commander-in-chief at the end of this dreadful war of 1914 to 1918. In August 1918, Philippe Pétain advocated for a major offensive in Lorraine that would push the German army back onto its own soil, where it would suffer a defeat justifying the end of the conflict and the indisputable terms of the restored peace. The immediate cessation of hostilities is preferred solely by the will of politicians and the weariness of the general staffs, thus providing all the arguments for an unfinished war due to the betrayal of their elites to a subdued Germany that would challenge all of Europe and the victorious Allies barely 20 years later. Foreseeing these dire consequences, the Marshal, a man reputed to be impassive, wept before Generalissimo Foch, who would later testify, regretting his mistake of not having listened to him. If the dur de dire, as the unanimity of the French wanted this war of 14 to 18 to be, was just a slogan for some, it was a reality for Pétain. Philippe Pétain is aware of his career. It is recognition, glory, and military and civil consecration. Already Commander-in-Chief of the Army, he was appointed Inspector General on February 18, 1922. A dangerous rebellion movement in Morocco prompted the Minister of War to ask the Marshal to take control of the situation. Promoted to Commander-in-Chief in Morocco in July 1925, Pétain, then 70 years old, secured the French victory in the Rif, where the leader, Abdelkrim, submitted. On May 29, 1926. On September 18, 1927, he presided over the inauguration of the Douaumont ossuary, which he was made and remains to this day the honorary president. On January 22, 1931, he was received at the French Academy by Paul Valéry. During this interwar period, marked by governmental instability and despite the numerous scandals of this Third Republic, Pétain agreed to participate in the government of Humurg, a broad national union. Following the riots of February 6, 1934, he was appointed Minister of War. His wish was to be Minister of Public Instruction. But this government also falls, and the Marshal, noting the political impotence driven by their only partisan passion, refuses to be part of another government. On April 6, 1935, during the presentation of the Legion of Honor at the War College, he delivered an important speech emphasizing the significance of aviation and armored vehicles in a future conflict. He understands well that the upcoming war will not resemble the previous one, but he also knows that governments are unwilling to make the necessary budgetary efforts. With the advent of the Popular Front in 1936, which supports the Republicans in the Spanish Civil War, France becomes divided and passions run high. To the victorious nationalist government of General Franco, recognized on February 27, 1939, France sent Marshal Pétain as ambassador. Léon Blum laments in the newspaper Le Populaire that they are sending, as he says to coddle it, what we have of the best. It is at this post that he finds the declaration of war in September 1939. Cloaked in undeniable glory and the object of recognition from the entire nation, it is only natural that he becomes the recourse of a government in distress and the relief for the 40 million Pétainists who turn out to be the French people of disaster in 1940. At the moment when France suffered the greatest defeat in its history, on May 16th, Paul Reynaud, the head of government, asked Marshal Pétain to take the vice presidency. He declares on the radio, "The victor of Verdun, the one thanks to whom the attackers of 1916 did not pass. The one thanks to whom the morale of the French army in 1917 was restored for victory." Marshal Pétain returned this morning from Madrid, where he rendered so much service to France. He is now by my side as Minister of State, Vice President of the Council, putting all his wisdom and strength at the service of the country. The situation is worsening day by day. On June 10th, the government deserted the capital, Renault resigned, and the President of the Republic called upon Pétain. Although 84 years old and now concerned about the fate of every French citizen, the Marshal agrees to become the leader of a defeated, humiliated, and occupied state. He offers himself to France, French, at the call of Mr. As President of the Republic, I assume the leadership of the government of France starting today. Confident in the affection of our admirable army, which fights with a heroism worthy of its long military traditions against an enemy superior in numbers and arms. Surely, through its magnificent resistance, it has fulfilled our duties towards our allies. Confident in the support of the veterans whom I had the pride to command. Confident in the trust of the entire people, I offer myself to France to alleviate its suffering. It is under these terrible conditions that he will take all necessary measures to soften the living conditions of the French while preserving the honor and independence of the country and working to restore France as the great power it should be, freed from the subjugations that led it to this defeat. He signs the armistice that spares so many lives, the pains and sufferings associated with the war that he knows well. Bolstered by popular unanimity and the approval of the national representation through the vote of July 10, 1940, he breaks with a harmful policy whose painful consequences are felt throughout the entire country. He established the government in Vichy, residing himself at the Park Hotel. He founded the French state. He replaced the false principles of liberty, equality, fraternity with his motto work, family, homeland. Its organization, outlined in the principles of the community, constitutes the program of national revolution advocated to regain greatness and prosperity. Despite the conditions of a rigorous occupation, the clarity and pragmatism of the old leader are such that he manages to get the country back on track. Today, nearly 100 of the achievements of the French state still exist. Music in the background serves as a stark contrast to the intense emotions and ideological conflicts that characterize this historical period. The admiration and respect from the French people were unwavering, as evidenced by the meticulously preserved documents from that era. These documents provide a vivid and detailed picture of the high regard in which he was held by the French populace. On the other hand, the intense hatred from anti-France was rooted in a fundamental ideological conflict, which is clearly illustrated in the rich and detailed documents of the time. This complex and multifaceted dynamic is a key aspect of understanding the historical context of the period. His contempt and defiance towards leaders and orders, which created division among the French, have not been forgotten. In 1945, the liberators became the masters of politics again through the maneuvering of political parties. They condemned Philippe Pétain, Marshal of France and head of state, to death, a sentence commuted to life imprisonment, which he will endure for 6 long years under infamous conditions, at Portelet Fort and then at the Island of God. No humiliation will be spared for the man, an 89-year-old, the Marshal of France. From the arrest to the trial, where he remains silent throughout the proceedings, simply stating at the conclusion, "During this trial, I deliberately remained silent after having explained to the French people the reasons for my attitude. My only thought, was to stay with him on the soil of France, according to my promise, to try to protect him and alleviate his suffering. Whatever happens, he will not forget it. He knows that I defended him as I defended Verdun. Gentlemen of the judges, my life and my freedom are in your hands, but my honor I entrust to the homeland. Dispose of me according to your consciences. Mine reproaches me nothing, for during a long life, and having reached the threshold of death by my age, I affirm that I have had no other ambition than to serve France. Philippe Pétain is imprisoned. Harassment and petty annoyances are now his daily life. Prohibited visits, prohibition on seeing the sea, strict necessary materials. Finally, the oldest prisoner in the world, he dies on July 23, 1951 at the age of 95.
People gather behind 5 bishops, General Vegan, and numerous officers to attend the funeral of a death row inmate. The entire France is moved by this event. In Paris, the spontaneous popular fervor mobilizes thousands of people. A floral cross several dozen meters long is laid out at the Arc de Triomphe. The bell of Notre Dame rings out. This only happened at the death of the kings of France. His last wishes were to be buried at Douaumont among his poilus.
This will be denied to him, It has always been denied to him to this day. Mr. Marshal, you have saved France twice. You saved it and restored it spiritually and morally, helping it to regain its strong traditions of faith, work, and love for family and homeland. As long as there are French hearts in our country, we make this vow. You will go to Douaumont according to your last wishes. You will be fully rehabilitated. You will receive the title of Father of the Homeland. Marshal, here we are. Marshal, always here.
En nous donnant ta vie, ton génie et ta foi, tu sauves la patrie une seconde fois. Maréchal, nous voilà, devant toi le sauveur de la France. Nous jurons, nous tes gars, de servir et de suivre tes pas. Maréchal, nous voilà, tu nous as redonné l'espérance. La patrie renaîtra. Maréchal, nous voilà. Maréchal, nous voilà. Devant toi, le sauveur de la France. Nous jurons, nous tes gars, de servir et de suivre tes pas. Maréchal, nous voilà. Tu nous as redonné l'espérance. La patrie renaîtra. Maréchal, nous voilà.
Je viens vous faire une visite. Je ne peux pas m'adresser à chacun de vous en particulier. C'est impossible, vous êtes trop nombreux. Je pense à vous beaucoup. Mais soyez sûrs que dès que je le pourrai, je viendrai. Et alors ce sera une visite officielle. Alors, à bientôt, j'espère.